Hello everyone and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. This week it's your host Iain and Gary, and joining us again is the lovely Linda to review Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch.
What are you looking for?
A way out.
I'm going to help you to be free.
I'm waiting for this.
Sucker Punch came out, I think, 2011, and it was Zack Snyder's third movie.
Yeah. After...
he did the Dawn of the Dead remake, which, as you know, is in my top 10 all-time zombie movies. He also made 300, which is a striking visual, bravado, macho movie.
Lots of pecs.
But and then he moved on to Sucker Punch, and I think following the success that Zack Snyder has attained, I think he was given way too much creative license to do whatever he wanted. I think the producers were just on holiday when he made this film, because it makes no sense. I'll try and explain the plot. A girl who has been put into a mental hospital.
Yeah.
And she's going to have a lobotomy in a few days' time. And while she's there, she interacts with the other patients, and they plan an escape. That is essentially the entire movie. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually deal with any of those themes that are inherent in that type of movie. It just glosses over it with an uber over-the-top CGI comic video game adaptation. And it's so boring.
Linda, what do you think of this movie?
I actually really like this movie, but it is one of those movies that you either like it or you don't, as obviously Gary doesn't. But I think the first time you see the film, you've got to go in with an attitude of kind of not trying to understand it and just kind of sit back and take it in. Because I think if you try to, then you start trying to overanalyze it and stuff like that, and that's where people kind of hit problems with it. I do think it's a film that, like you say, that Zack Snyder, I mean, he co-wrote the script for it, and it's a film that he's like given license to. Oh, I can do whatever I want with this.
Just go mad.
And just go a bit mad with it. And I think it's. They say the film is targeted at kind of two types of people that are really into your comic books and the kind of nerdy, geeky people, things like that, or teenage boys who just like hot chicks dressing up and fighting. But I'm neither of those. And I actually really enjoy it for a multitude of reasons. And one of the big things for me is actually the soundtrack, the music.
The music for this film is just amazing. I mean, the opening sequence with Sweet Dreams playing. The only other time I've ever seen Sweet Dreams being used in a film was House on Haunted Hill, with the slow drive up, and it just kind of sets the tone that it's a very nice melody song, but bad shit's gonna happen. And that our first little opening sequence where nothing's said. I love that little opening sequence. Nothing is said. That you realise that the mother has died, and this presence of this stepfather is just walking around the house, and you see Baby Doll's character and her sister, and she tries to defend her sister, and ultimately a tragedy happens. She gets taken to the mental institution, and you're right. In the first minute, she looks around and she sees all these little things that you don't pick up on at first: the lighter, the map, the key. But then when she, I believe she goes into this fantasy world of the brothel, and then further deeper into her little crazy world to protect herself from the tragedy that she has caused, and how she's actually going to try and help herself or ultimately help somebody else.
Well, taking on from what you both just said about the opening of the movie, it is instantly, the moment the movie starts, you realise that you're pretty much in a dream sequence already.
Yeah.
It is already fantasy the moment the film starts, because there are 2 to 3 minutes of no dialogue.
Yeah.
Flawlessly done, I will say. Zack Snyder is a visual director. Absolutely. He encapsulates feelings and words with pictures alone and with sound.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the songs that are playing are telling the story for you. And
Yes,
he
yeah.
is very good at doing that. And Watchmen is a prime example of music
Watchmen is
sequences
amazing.
dictating how you should feel. It worked for Watchmen to a degree, but for Sucker Punch, every 5 minutes was a new song and a new set piece
Yeah,
and a new
yeah.
environment, and it felt like an MTV music video series. I felt like I was on the music channel. Because there was no dialogue, it was just song,
But
action sequence,
once
song,
you've
action
seen this
sequence,
film
song.
Roger that. Starting my run.
Few times it has many layers. When they're in the little makeup room, you know, I imagine that they're in the institution and they're in the toilets, you know, just looking in dirty mirrors. But what
You can
we're
imagine
seeing is a
that.
brothel.
You can imagine
Yeah,
that,
you
Ian, but
can-
that's
you
not in
can
the film at all.
No, it's not. But this is what I'm saying. The third or fourth time that you watch this film, I'm not saying that you have to watch this film 3 or 4 times, but the film has many layers. And if you're wanting to understand this film, you don't have to understand this film. I personally feel that once this film starts, Baby Doll takes me by the hand and just runs with me through this crazy story. I mean, it's so crazy. In fact, there are samurai minigunners in this film.
That's
There are
not a story.
I don't give a crap. I've never seen undead samurais with miniguns, and watching this girl run up and shooting him in the face and just drop down while Bjork is blazing through the stereo. I'm just like, yeah, I'm done. I'm just going to go
I
with
was
this one.
with you, Ian, up until the point. Up until the point. I mean, watching the film, the sequence where she first dances and she's told, use your imagination, forget your body, just go with it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she's taken to this fantastically looking world and she's been told, here's your weapons.
Yeah,
Use
yeah,
these
by
to
Scotland.
survive.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the big samurai soldier comes in and she's there and I'm like, okay, this is going to be quite tense, and then it kicks her. Just like, but it stands back up. No, wait. That completely tears away any tension for the character. You realise instantly that she's a god mode. She cannot be harmed in
But
her imagination.
yes,
It's
that's
imagination
it.
land. It's Disneyland. There's no fear for the character. No, that is the point, that there's no fear for the characters. How am I supposed to care for the tension knowing that
Who
she's
said you
fighting
had to
these
care?
giant things? If you don't care, why bother?
Because you're supposed to just follow her story. If she was going to die in
What
the first
story?
If she was going to die in the first 5
She's
minutes of her
dancing.
own imagination fantasy,
In a mental asylum, she's clearly
but
insane.
coming back from that, in the fantasy, she is fighting a samurai. In the fantasy of the brothel, she is dancing and telling the story of her fighting this thing. And in the reality of the theatre and the institution, she is stood on stage talking to the doctor, making up this story so that the other patients can run around and steal the
What
things
are you
that they can
talking
use to
about?
escape.
That is not in the film.
How did you not see that in the film?
That doesn't exist. You don't see.
Dr.
You do not
Gorska.
see any of the mental
Yeah, but
asylum
I
throughout
think-
the entire film.
I think the problem is though you actually do. There are little snippets throughout the film, and I didn't pick it up the first time I watched the film. You don't pick it up until the second time, and there's a very subtle difference in the lighting and the colorization of those scenes. There are very tiny, minute little snippets that are actually in the mental institute.
Yeah,
And of what she's actually seeing in reality, and you don't pick that up the first time when you watch it because it is really quick. But the whole thing is about this imagination, and the whole thing with Baby Doll is the doctor's asked her to use her imagination. She does it with all her patients. She uses music to get them, and it's almost like you getting them into a hypnotised trance and things like that. And that's essentially what kind of, if you want to see it that way, that Zack Snyder's asking us to do as well, because you're right, he doesn't really explain or show the story in real of what's happening in the mental institute, and he leaves it to you, to your interpretation. And I think that's, you've just got to kind of accept that.
I'll get the map.
I wanted to see if they were going to explore those issues, to actually explore them instead of going into triple fantasy land.
Well, yeah,
it didn't need to do
but
that.
the problem with that is that you know how these stories end out. You know, a girl goes into the mental institution. She explains about where all her problems are, and the bad guy gets captured at the end. We've all seen you should see Girl Interrupted if you haven't seen it, and that is a brilliant story of a girl going into a mental institution and overcoming whatever problems that she had. Baby Doll's character in Sucker Punch, she knew she'd already done something bad, and she was trying to rectify it. And in a way, Scott Glenn's character is the wise man. He is the angel telling her on her inside, you need to stand up and you need to fight, or you are never going to accomplish what you want to do.
Remember, ladies, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
I mean, you know, so she imagines these samurai warriors that she has to fight and overcome, and then once she does, she then goes back into the fantasy brothel, and obviously she is then noticing Blue, the head gangster guy, who I think is a brilliant actor in this film. His presence is just.
He is a cliched, one-dimensional note.
Yes, but all the male characters in this film
Doesn't have to act.
All the male characters in this film, apart from Scott Glenn, are bastards. I didn't know what time zone this was supposed to be set in, and it's the 50s and 60s, which obviously the men had a lot of presence to be able to say, you look, just ship this girl off to a mental institution, lobotomize them, stick a spike inside their eye, and you're like. And I'm glad there's the fantasy element in this film, because it would just be a boring 1950s drama.
Yeah, instead it's a 1950s boring mess. Every sequence that lasts about 7 to 8 minutes with these group of girls is fantastic on its own. You take any 7-minute sequence and it's watchable. But when it's sequence after sequence of fighting steampunk zombie Nazis, the sequence itself, the action sequences are phenomenal. It's just I don't care. They become boring. How do you turn something so visually beautiful to look at boring? And that's simply because the characters are immune to any of the dream effects. It's like, what's she called? Rocket.
Yeah.
And the Germans come out and they start shooting her, and she just dodges like the Matrix.
That's it. In the imagination, Rocket is fighting these Nazi zombies, but in the real world, she is in the dance in the brothel. She is dancing to distract Blue and the rest of the guards, so that Blondie and Sweet Pea and Baby Doll can sneak off and steal map or key or whatnot. And then obviously, if you bring it back further in the real world of the institution, she is probably causing a distraction so that those girls can still sneak out. And obviously, you don't see that, but you're supposed to, in a way, use your imagination. You know, if you see the plot holes, you know, you could just go, well, I don't understand what's actually causing those plot holes. But if you look further past it, you can actually just notice these little hints that, in a way, the writers give you to go, well, this is actually happening at the exact same time that this is happening. But we're giving you the fantasy element of it because it's a lot more exciting. And it is a lot more exciting. I mean, when they move down the trenches, they worked very hard as a group. And you can see that, the slapping of the shoulders, the covering of every corners, you know, the axe work, the sword work.
I thought it was hysterical. I laughed my ass off.
But that's a good thing, at least you laughed.
I was laughing at how insulting it was. Zack Snyder went out and said that this is women empowerment. This is a female empowerment movie.
Yes, majorly.
Really?
Yes!
What have they got to be empowered by? They imagine themselves, or she imagines herself in a brothel where they are being subjected sexually, where they are having attempted rape.
Which is a representation of the institute. Yeah, which is a representation of the institute.
No, if it's a representation, it just has to be a representation of audiences and people a whole. If it's a female empowerment movie, they're supposed to empower these women. All they're empowering these women against are these sexist pig men.
Which are there.
Really? But these girls, what are they wearing? next to nothing. They're wearing skin-tight, skin-revealing clothing, and they're doing provocative dances to distract these men so that they can stab them with a knife. Is that female empowerment? No. You look at Hunger Games. You look at Aliens with Sigourney Weaver. You look at Tomb Raider with Lara Croft. That is female empowerment. It's like Zack Snyder has no concept of how you empower a woman in a film.
Well, maybe he doesn't, but visually he does in a way tell you. You know, Baby Doll's meek little character of not saying a thing and being all nervous. She then turns around and, yes, in a fantasy imagination, she fights off 3 giant zombie samurais. But what does that tell me? That tells me that she's actually beginning to get the balls to be able to stand up. And it does reflect later on in the movie when Blue comes up and grabs her.
Come on. Did you lose your fight? Huh?
And says, I'm going to have you. And she's like, no, you will never have me. Which is not empowerment. It's not her from what she was at the beginning, you know, a meek little scared little girl, to a fucking badass at the end, pulling Sweet Pea out and escaping. It is good empowerment.
You'll never have me. Ever.
Not everybody sees it like that, and you know, we're not expecting you to all enjoy this movie, but I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I mean, at first it was the eye candy, I have to admit. There is some eye candy in this film when they're moving down the trenches, when they're fighting dragons, you know, samurai swords and machine guns. It was fun, but then after watching it second time and third time, I saw a lot more in the film than I previously had done. The layers were stripping away, and my mind was going, I see how that works. I see how that works. And it, for me, it works.
There is nothing you can do to me.
You listen to me, you old whore. It's too late to play the good guy. It's far too late. You're suddenly not aware of what it is we do here?
I teach them to survive. You.
And that's what he wanted to achieve. He didn't want, really, I don't think anyway, a deep, meaningful film, which, like you say, is if you strip away all the glory, it's quite a depressing story.
Yeah,
and
it is.
And he didn't want that. He didn't want it to be that type of film. And I think that's what you've got to accept. And I think that's why people have the problem with it, is that they can't just take it as it is. And, you know, each to your own, you know.
Yeah.
It's
not everybody's going to love this film.
No, they're not.
But
clearly Gary doesn't. And whereas we enjoy it, and like I said, I enjoy it because I like the music in it. I do like the way that the little girls are kind of the way they dress. You know, I have a Sweet Pea outfit. Okay, I've gone as Sweet Pea, the fancy dress, and the fight scenes, I think, is choreographed really well, and everything visually it's stunning, and that, you know, that's why I like the movie. It's just for me, it's nice, simple pleasure to watch.
You hate this movie.
I don't hate the movie. I can't hate the movie.
No, wow.
It just
Snyder.
bored me. It really did. I just waited for the film to end. I just wanted it to say something. It broke up some of those scenes. I'll tell you, there was one moment in the film that made me feel something, and that was when Rocket sacrifices herself to save the group. And it was quite a nice moment, because you had a whole sister relationship going on.
Yeah.
But that was one of the only moments where they got to act. So for me, that was perhaps my favourite scene.
Just when you get home. When you get... You tell Mom I love her.
My favourite scene has to be the train sequence. They've just gone into this fantasy world. They're ziplining down onto this train, and Rocket, Sweet Pea, and Baby Doll move up this train, very 300 style. You know, slow motion sequences, shotguns going off, people getting punched in the face. But I like that. I do like just zooming into the battle sequence, because if you just watch it normally, it's over too quickly. But yeah, the 3 of them going in there and kicking ass. A lot of fun.
favourite scene, we've already actually mentioned it, is the first fantasy scene with Baby Doll and the samurai soldiers, and mainly because, well, I love the Bjork song anyway that's played, and I just think that kind of sets the scene really. But also it's the size, the disparity in size between Baby Doll, like this little character, and this massive like samurai soldier, kind of statuesque soldier, and it's that kind of moment of her change from being just kind of a
meek little girl.
Yeah, that's right, and to becoming this fighter, this warrior, and that's why I really like that scene, and just the way it kind of plays out, and the little bit at the end when she jumps off after killing the last one. She just jumps off, and it's just like a little hop down on
the little walk down the stairs.
She's kind of just got, I've got this attitude of I kick ass. That's probably my favourite.
Would you recommend the film?
I would recommend people to watch it, just because I think you should have a go. But like I said before, if you are going to watch it, try to go in with an attitude of okay, let's just see what it's like. Don't try to overanalyze or anything like that.
Not until the third or fourth time you've watched it.
That's right. But I would recommend, because like I said, it is you will either like it, love it, whatever, or you'll just like Gary, just it's not for me. But if you don't give it a chance, then you never know, will you?
Recommend the movie?
Categorically no. As a comic book adaptation, it fails.
Yeah.
As a video game adaptation, it fails. As a movie-going experience, it fails. The film is boring. It is dull. It is uninspired. There is no character development. There is no story. There is just an incoherent mess. And even the closing moments of the film just add on to the making of no sense. The closing monologue, I listened to it a few times to try and make sense of where this ending come from, and I gave up. I walked out of the cinema when this film came out. I endured watching it, and when it finished, I felt like I'd just received a lobotomy. Avoid Sucker Punch.
I do recommend this film. I actually think this is a good first date movie. If you're a guy or a girl and you're wanting to go out on a first date, don't know what film to watch.
Good job you're married.
And you're sick and tired of the Fast and the Furious and the same horror movies and the same, female crying stories of overcoming love and stuff like that. Sucker Punch is a good film because you do have the female heroes that any girl can get behind and be empowered by, even if you don't get that from the movie. And for the guys, you do have the eye candy. The action sequences, it may look comic book style, it may look computer graphics, but that's fine. When you see a B-52 bomber flying around with a dragon chasing it and bridges are exploding and castles are coming, it's crazy shit, and I like it.
If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.